Welcome to Crummer Connections podcast series. I'm your host, JB Adams. In this series, I'm talking with Crummer alumni and inviting them to share their accomplishments, challenges, and best business advice. Today's show is brought to you by the Crummer Graduate School of Business at Rollins College. Consistently ranked as the #1 MBA in the state of Florida, the Crummer School offers a variety of educational programs to prepare you to become a global, responsible business leader. The Crummer Graduate School of Business, experience excellence. Today's guest is Serg Albino. He graduated from Crummer with his MBA in the year 2010. He's a serial entrepreneur with a long career in technology, engineering, and consulting. He has been the co-founder of several businesses, including ecoSpears, an impact venture delivering cost-effective and eco-friendly clean tech solutions to destroy persistent organic pollutants from our land and waterways. Serg, welcome to the show.
Hello, glad to be here.
It's great to have you. In a moment, we're going to talk about what ecoSpears is and what ecoSpears does, but let's start first with a little context. You're not just a Crummer alumnus, you have an ongoing relationship with the school. Where would people recognize you from?
I actually am an adjunct professor also for the NASA Rollins Entrepreneurship Scholar Distinction Program. And I also help mentor the NASA ICE program as well with Dr. Pete McAllen.
Okay, so tell me about the teaching and being a professor. What do you love about the teaching?
You know, I think it's all about, again, this whole notion of just putting yourself out there into the world, right? And being as transparent as possible. I love educating young minds and, especially, the way they think is so much different from my generation. And I love kind of cultivating them and working with them and how to incorporate that into the existing industries and existing methodologies. So love that about teaching.
Yeah, excellent. And it's a great way to give back to the school as well. We're going to learn a little bit more about ecoSpears. This is a tech company. It's an environmental company, and you're a co-founder. Tell us about what you do.
So ecoSpears is a clean tech solutions company where we take innovative solutions and that originally stemmed from NASA Kennedy Space Center and pivoted them to and commercialized them for the environmental sector. So we like to help clients solve some of these chemical contamination in the environment that has gone on for 40 to 50 years, and it's still there, and the future is grim for truly solving it for that site. And we're basically working with them, instead of using yesterday's solutions or technologies to solve yesterday's problems, utilize innovation and technology to truly solve it and completely close that site for good and forever.
So if I may, we have a contaminated site. It's toxic. What would be the old way of dealing with it, and what's the new way?
So the old way of dealing with it, which is actually still the current way of dealing with it, is dig it up and move it to somebody else's backyard, sometimes very, very far away. In the sense of Hawaii, they take it all the way to California or Portland or Clive, Utah. And then once it gets there, they put it in a tomb and they keep it there forever. Or they decide to destroy it via incineration. So the crux of that process, of that old process that's still being used today, is that today's world and focus on climate change and CO2 emissions, transporting a lot of that contaminated dirt or contaminated water takes a lot of CO2 emissions and puts it out into the air. And then once you decide to burn it, it creates much more. So you're really sacrificing clean air to get clean water and clean soil. And it's not a really good trade-off, especially in today's world where focus on climate change once again and the environment and sustainability is just, it's more front and center for everyone these days, not just the younger generation.
So what do you guys do instead?
So instead, we help develop on-site solutions for our clients. So depending on where the solutions may lie, let's say it's in the soil or groundwater or sediment, we have different solutions for that. We have a much more surgical approach, and we customize our innovative solutions for their needs. So at the end of the day, we're actually destroying the contaminants and without burning them or transporting them out of there in a much more green and economical way.
Yeah, it's long-term and sustainable. And finally, just tell us, what do you love about this kind of work?
Like I said, it allows for me to meet a lot of people and create a lot of friendships out there. Some of the new friends that I have are completely from a sector that I've never been a part of before, which is the environmental sector. I'm now talking to a lot of hydrogeologists as opposed to aerospace scientists, right?
Mm-hmm.
It allows for me to also figure out the intricacies of an industry, but also figure out a way to how to disrupt it. And that's really the challenge, right? Because if you could find a good way to disrupt it, sometimes it's the most simplest thing. But if you're able to do that, that's something you could hang your hat on for a long time. Yeah.
Excellent. You were not always a co-founder. You were not always an entrepreneur. So let's dig into your backstory. I want to find out, where were you born, Serg?
I was born in Negros Oriental, Bacolod City, Philippines.
And what were those early years like for you as a kid?
As as an island boy growing up in the Philippines, I was a grandma's boy. I lived there from when I was born to until I was about 8 years old. And it was a lot of, playing outside. There wasn't Sega Genesis or PS4 back in the day. So you learn to basically mold with nature. I remember digging 3 feet deep into the dirt to get clay. And I remember making these figures, race car figures and planes out of clay that we had to dig. Things like going down to a river and finding caves and see what treasures we could find out there. That was some of the things in my early childhood.
Now, did you have an awareness of what it meant to be an engineer, or this was just natural in you?
No, that was just figure someplace to have a good time and play with friends. Yeah.
Okay. And what was the transition point of that childhood?
Transition point. My mom at that time lived in New Jersey, New York area. My dad and I lived in the Philippines, and then my mom basically petitioned us to start a new life in New York for essentially a better opportunity for the family, especially for me, so we relocated from New York, from the Philippines to New York around 8 years old back in 1988, and English is a second language. It was a very difficult transition. Let's put it that way for an island boy into New York City.
And you were also exposed to a different culture.
I was exposed to a New York Minute culture. Yeah, definitely. That was a big realization for me, where now everything happens fast paced. Everything is upbeat, and it's just hustle and grind. And that was the New York lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. So after you moved to New York City, I don't know if you were still digging around in the dirt, but you had a new set of interests as a teenager. What were you doing after you came to America?
I got into New York was very much about art. So I got into art quite a bit. The painting, the Bob Ross inspired painting that you see behind me. Mm-hmm. I actually did that when I was in 4th or 5th grade, somewhere around there. That's an oil canvas painting. And I got into students. My mom, when I was in 7th grade, didn't want me to spend my summer months getting into trouble and getting into street fights. So she enrolled me to Students Art League of New York to study fine arts. So I was really big into fine arts when I was in New York.
Okay. So, and did you pursue that as your next step?
No. Let's just say I got into a little bit of trouble when I was in New York, and mom and dad decided to pull me out and move from New York to Florida to start a new life in Florida. So I got pulled out of the fine arts. And when you moved to Central Florida back in the mid 90s, fine arts was really not a thing.
Yeah.
So,
well, there's definitely a recurring theme of at first it was just building, and now it's artistry. but just creativity in general, under the theme of being an engineer. So you have another transition. Now you're in Orlando, Florida, and you're exposed to a whole new set of interests. What did those include?
Coming back to Florida kind of reinvigorated my love for nature, right? And space, really. I mean, NASA is just literally a drive away. So I remember moving into Point Siena in Kissimmee, and it's in the middle of the forest. And I'm so used to a lot of, sirens and cars and train audio at night, right? Those audible sounds from a city life. And now I'm hearing crickets for the first time in a long time. And I remember just looking up in my backyard and I see this tons of lights, because there's hardly any, development in that area. So I really got into astronomy and love for space at that point in time.
When we come back in a moment, we're going to hear more about Serg's early career and how he found his way to the Crummer Graduate School of Business. We'll be back in a moment. So we are back with Serg Albino of ecoSpears, learning about his early career. Serg, after you got out of high school and you were still sort of searching, I take it, and trying to figure out what you wanted to do next?
Yeah, so the path of, okay, where do I go for college? I only applied to one college, that was UCF. And that was because they had, it was their first aerospace program. And I figured, hey, I like the idea of space. Fine arts is not really a good path for me here, because I would have to relocate to New York to find a job. But if I have access to NASA here, I can basically get into aerospace, which is engineering, and it kind of molds the two together for me. I could do CAD work, which is an art thing, but I could also work on space work, which would be my love for space things. So I was able to mesh the two together to go through that program.
A great way to bring it together.
Yeah.
So after you graduated with your degree, there were opportunities?
No. I graduated in 2003. So that was post 9/11. And I remember finding a very, very tough time finding a job because there's a lot of folks being laid off during 9/11. So a lot of startups or entry-level jobs were taken over by, senior-level people. Off tangent, I actually just contacted one of my closest colleagues who had a painting business, and that summer he taught me how to paint houses. So that was kind of like my transition job, and then eventually, paid my way for several months, and then I finally got a job with Siemens. Okay. Which I got into next.
An engineering job.
A drafting job, actually.
Not a painting job.
Not okay. A painting job.
So drafting at Siemens, other opportunities coming your way that eventually led you to Kennedy Space Center?
Yeah, so after Siemens, I went, I wanted to pursue more of an R&D, research and development type role. And there was an opportunity with a company called Cubic Defense to design military equipment for simulation and training. So I went there for about a year. And after that program, or after that contract, I went over to L3 Communications, where I was a thermal engineer there. We designed laser rangefinders for all the UAV systems. And it was because of that background in thermal management, an outfit from NASA, Bionetics Corporation, basically headhunted me to help them out on their thermal issue for one of their space station projects. And that's how I got into NASA.
So based on all of that, Serg, what advice would you give to a young person who's searching to figure out what to do next in their career? Your time in your 20s is a very valuable time. Take all the risk you want. You can always make money, right? You can always make money in different ways. And even now today, especially more today, there's several ways to make a living outside of just your job. But don't try to
search for a career in your 20s, try everything out there. Put yourself out there again to the world and figure it is what you like. Because there's a good point in time when I was working at Siemens where I questioned engineering, where I actually went back to school and thought I wanted to become a veterinarian. So, it was only the ability to put myself out there and try different things that I realized where I needed to position myself in the engineering side of things.
An excellent takeaway, Serg. Thank you.
Thank you.
Serg, I would like to understand more about how you found your way to Crummer. There was something going on in your career that made you think you needed some additional education?
Yeah, I actually knew about Crummer back in 2004 when I was working at Siemens. And I saw one of the, events that Crummer was hosting to market the MBA program, and I attended one of those events, and I remember Dean McAllister was speaking in one of those events, and I heard him speak, and I remember him. It wasn't the way he spoke, and it wasn't the words, but it was the way he controlled the room. And at that point on, I said, I need to learn that type of command. And being able to learn that, as well as also learn the proper theories of business, I think it will complement my engineering side, that I could actually move up in corporate world. And little did I know that I wouldn't be actually moving up in the corporate world. It would actually be entrepreneurship. So
I was going to say, at that point, you had not anticipated becoming an entrepreneur.
No, not at all.
It's great how those plans come together.
Yeah.
So, Serg, if you're ready, it's now time to play Crummer Insider Free Association.
Awesome.
So for this, I'm going to read you a list of prompts. For each prompt, I will invite you to say the first thing that comes into your mind. These are items that any Crummer student can relate to. Are you ready to play, Serg?
I am.
All right, here's the first one. I started my Crummer education in the year
2009.
I finished classes and graduated in the year
2010.
There were this many students in my cohort.
Ooh, probably around 25, 26, somewhere there.
Okay. My cohort was known for being...
Oh, man. I think every cohort would say the most outrageous, but I think we were just a good blend of folks out there that were very seasoned executives in different companies, as well as mid-level program managers also in other companies. So,
all right, great. For our international study, we went to
Bratislava was one of them, and then Vienna.
Okay, great. My favorite professor was?
Dr. Bob, Professor Bob, and Professor Whittingham.
Okay. And my favorite course was?
I like the domestic consulting program as well as the sustainability program.
Terrific. Let's move into some of the surprises that you encountered as a student and how you applied them afterwards. So first, I know that you had other international experiences beyond the one that all the students went to. You went to IPADE. First, some of our listeners may not know what IPADE is. Can you explain it?
Yeah, IPADE is basically a program in Mexico City where you did corporate social responsibility program in IPADE University, and it was a full immersion course where you get a chance to look into corporate sustainability and do a case study and go after different case studies with your cohort from all different parts of, South America, Central America, and even Europe. And it actually kind of felt like you were part of a UN program because everybody was mic'd up and they were speaking German, they were speaking Spanish, they were speaking English, and there's translators in your ear. So it was really, really fun.
And what was your major takeaway from that experience?
Just a cultural perspective of how things are viewed in different parts of the world.
Yeah, excellent. And you have another experience as a result of what you just mentioned a moment ago with Dr. Bob Prescott and the domestic consulting course, but
Mhm.
that's something that you actually had the opportunity to apply
Yeah.
in your actual work. Tell us how that went.
Dr. Bob always said these terminologies or these sayings in class that I took away from the main thing or Sobremesa, and I
Tell us what
applied.
those are.
So the main thing is basically allowing and getting to a point of what the main one thing would be for that client and for that contract to put that main thing as first and foremost. I've actually kind of taken that and morphed it a little bit based on what I've learned from my current mentor, Terrence Berlin, where, we always say before you get two, you always got to get one. And that's very similar. And it's just about keeping focus so that you're not chasing shiny objects, especially when you're consulting.
Mm-hmm. And what was the second one Dr. Bob said?
Sobremesa, which is basically just everything's on the table. And as much as some folks are not comfortable with it, I'm very transparent with how I go after and work on my contracts, especially on the costing side. Because at the end of the day, I like to work with value partners rather than just clients, and giving them a good sense of how I work the budgeting and costing side helps them feel at ease that they're not having to think that they're going to be taken advantage of. Everything's on the table, and then they get to have those knobs to dial in and to turn down and turn up whenever they feel like it. Because at the end of the day, as long as I'm adding value, they're going to continue to ratchet up the expectations as well as the performance and deliverables.
So how do you think these lessons that you got studying in a course for a grade have been applied in real life in your work as an entrepreneur?
It's those two things that I've used in every single startup that I've worked on, especially in the consulting one. And the unique thing now with ecoSpears is that every single client is essentially a consulting program, right? So I'm able to kind of really utilize those things to just keep the clients focused, because sometimes clients don't know what they want. So the main thing or the one thing really hones in on that, so we could develop a true program around it and solve their true needs. And the Sobremesa just gives them that sense of partnership right away. That partnership is just not a bolted on aspect into my business. It's actually a built in, right? And they are more comforted by that we are true partners.
Mm-hmm. Serg, we only have a little bit of time left. We're going to be bringing this to a close soon, but I just want to understand, how do you think you're different as a result of your Crummer experience? How did it make you better?
Again, Crummer helped me express myself better into the world. Helped me vocalize my internal ideas of technology into the world. It helped me craft a better message on how do I take the crazy ideas that I have and building technologies into actually solving issues out there in the world, solving real world problems. And if it wasn't for Crummer and the network that Crummer has, these found friends to that program would never have been there, and the new friends outside of Crummer would not be there also, because I wouldn't have been able to communicate better with them. So Crummer has been an integral part of my career, in my life.
And I know that people are going to listen to this. They might want to reach out to you with questions. What's the best way for someone to reach you?
Hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm very active on Facebook also. Or just stop by the office over here in Altamont Springs.
Terrific. One final bit. If there's someone listening who has not yet gotten their MBA, what advice would you give to a prospective student?
I would say stop thinking about it. Just dive in. Sometimes you have to just jump into the fire, and don't worry if there's a frying pan or not. Just go in there. But when you do go in there, come in as an empty cup and go full immersion, right? Enjoy every minute of it. Those 2 years go by so fast. Put yourself out there. There's so many great programs that you could be involved with, like the NASA program, like the international programs. Any availability you can have to do domestic consulting or international consulting work, do it. It's a great program, and it's right here in Central Florida.
I don't think there's anything else that I could add to make that any better. Serg Albino, I want to thank you for being our guest today on Crummer Connections podcast series. It's been a great pleasure. I learned a lot, and everyone else did too.
Thanks, JB.
Thank you, Serg. Today's show is brought to you by the Crummer Graduate School of Business at Rollins College. Now is a great time to consider enhancing your career success by pursuing an advanced degree in business. And the Crummer School offers a variety of educational programs to help you become a global, responsible business leader. To learn more about the programs and begin the application process, go to crummer.rollins.edu. The Crummer Graduate School of Business. Experience excellence. Thanks for listening. I'll be back again soon with another episode. Crummer Connection podcast series is a production of Victor Media Group. It's the mission of Victor Media Group to make the world a better place by making ourselves better people. If you like this show, follow us at Victor Media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Today's show was created and hosted by JB Adams, executive produced by Gerard Mitchell, with production by Jeremy Harmson and production assistance by Gerardo Abreu. Our gratitude goes out to Mike Brown and Loveland Finley in Alumni Relations for their gracious help and support. Until next time, fiat lux.